I moved to Nashville. Definitely working with Jack White was inspiring for me to move to Nashville. I remember I got an email from his team that Jack was collaborating with RZA from the Wu-Tang Clan. And I was excited because by me being a big fan of RZA, I was like, oh, this is amazing. Came all the way to Nashville, got in the studio to record with him and Jack White, and RZA canceled the session. So, my heart was broken. Jack felt bad. And he was like, man, I don't want to send you back to New York. I have a couple solo songs. And to make a long story short, is what started Jack's solo career.
What is going on, everybody? So I'm really pumped about the guest that I get to entertain today, that we get to talk to today. It is none other than Grammy-winning, multi-talented, shall we say, Mr. Daru Jones. And so let me obviously we need to give a little context here. Man, I saw you, the first time, Daru, by the way, I guess you could say hey to everybody.
Hey, what's going on, Brother Stephen?
So yeah, the first time I ever kind of checked out what you do, I was buying my second house. This is a weird story, right? So I'm buying my second house, and the home inspector was going through, and we were, talking. He was a cool guy, and he was talking music, and he said, man, have you checked out the drummer? Man, he's got great shoes. And I said, I don't know. That was like what he led with. He's like, man, his shoes and his clothes, they're just on point. And he said he plays with Jack White. He kept going on. And I was like, I'm feigning like, yeah. And I'm like, man, I got to go find out who this cat is and see, see his digs, see what he's wearing. And it was Daru. So I'm really excited to have you on here. I got to see you perform at PASIC a couple years back. I believe you were with a guitar player at that performance. And he's on the cover of Modern Drummer magazine this coming month. And then you also have a new book, right?
Yes, sir.
What's your book?
Yeah, so the name of the book is, and just correctly, I'm actually on the Modern Drummer for March, just the March issue that's out now.
Oh, it's out now. Very cool.
It's out now. Yes, sir. It's out right now. The digital issue, and the physicals is going to come soon. But right now, the digital is out. Link in the bio. But yeah, thank you so much for having me on your show. I'm excited, and that's a crazy story how we met. But yeah, so this book is called Daru Jones Plays the Breaks, live from Layman. And Layman is a studio in Nashville. It's by Forks, the drum shop. And the history from Layman, it used to be a pharmacy back in the days. And the gentleman, he bought it and he turned it into a studio. And it was one of the places that I had been recording for a lot of projects that I was doing at the time. And I was like, man, I just thought it would be cool to do an audio book. And I'm just like giving narratives and stories on my creative process when I'm working. Like basically in the book, it features illustrations from various artists that I've known. Like my brother D, he made the intro art illustration piece. And it's really cool. It's a lot of great illustration in here. And it was prepared by Tristan. Now Tristan used to work for Third Man Records. He used to help, be a part of designing like the team when they would design the CDs or our covers. And I got a chance to work with him on this project. And this project features Marissa Swartz, who helped me put this book together with Gen Z. Like she's an author and she was on the top. I don't know if it was the top under 30 Forbes.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to get it wrong, but you can look that up. But she's been doing this for a while, and she's been a fan, so we was able to do this project. And she interviewed me. It's a bonus interview on this because this came out originally on CD. Like when I put this out last year, I put
that's
it
like an audio book.
It's an audio book. It's audio book, and here's actually the CD right here. The CD that came amazing. Out inside the CD, the insert. It was a book. So we actually wanted to do it. My original idea was to make this book with a vinyl record, but as you know, making vinyls nowadays, it takes so long to get them back. So I just went ahead and went the CD route. And plus, I remember back in the days, like when we came up, you read credits.
Oh man, So I would sit there and memorize it, Chris. Like that's the first thing I would do. I was telling my son the other day. I said, "Look, man, Spotify is cool, but honestly, I wish they would have a booklet for every artist and every album, so I could go and just like flip through and be like, wait, who played on this? Who?" That was the thing I wanted to find out
Yes.
first. Was like, wait, who was playing on this? You know?
Yeah, it was a joy getting those albums because while you were listening, you can go and read the notes. And like I said, like you said, you can see who played on the records. So it was cool that we were able to do this and with the CD and we put it out through a label called Fat Beats, which is a known hip hop label in New York that's been around for a long time. They distributed the album and I put it out through my label, Music Records. But anyway, yeah. So the book, it's audio book, but this is the book format that comes out in soft cover and a hardcover. You can get it through Barnes and Noble's link in my bio. And like I was saying, like there's just a bunch of everything that I talked about audio wise. We had it written down. So the intro was done by Breakbeat Lou, who was a legendary DJ. And Breakbeat Lou, it's a pleasure to even have him on this project because Lou was responsible for going through and finding the breaks on all those albums and putting them on one project for all like the producers that sample from. So you're talking, really? He was the guy that went and listened to like Rocksteady, found the break from Bernard Purdy, Funky Drummer, all these like legendary breaks, and he put them all on one collective album, and that's what it was a go-to for producers and DJs to sample from. So Breakbeat Dude, he did the intro, and he also mastered the project. So yeah, it's just a bunch of stories, and I'm just talking about like when I was in the studio working with Jack on a Pacific song. I talk about like whatever was happening at the time. It's just a short story, and I'm actually playing the original rhythms for that particular track. So it's a real treat. It's a real treat.
That's cool, and a lot of players don't. Like, there's several lost arts. I feel like that as technologies come along and stuff. Obviously, it changes, and but I think there's several lost arts, and the art of the break and finding that break. Because for everybody, they used to get records and they would find a spot where there was a drum break. And they're like, oh, wait a second. Yeah, that sound, and they would cut that. They'd cut it out. And then they'd loop that. And that would be kind of the basis. And there's a buddy in Nashville, Darren King. He was with Mute Math for years. Every time I see him, he's grabbing up, he's always digging for old records because he's still going back trying to find, these obscure albums where he can just find a break and be like, oh, and he still grabs those and uses them. And I think that's kind of a forgotten art for some people, or maybe they don't even know that's where they came from, because we have people, obviously they made music from these great drum breaks from these, like you mentioned Rocksteady, but now we have cats that are taking those breaks from different songs that was originally from Rocksteady, and they're making a song off of the break that was done on, like they're not even going back to the source. They're just like, oh no, this song used this, and they don't have a clue where that break came from. I was letting somebody listen to the meters the other day, and I was like, no, you need to listen to this break. This break is really popular. And I said, you've heard it on a ton of stuff.
Yo, I'm glad you mentioned that. And just to add on to what you're saying, yeah, it just back in that era. I'm just grateful, that those artists, all the artists, I feel like they always gave a drummer a little solo within the song. You know what I'm saying? Like it was always a breakdown, talking to James Brown, Aretha Franklin, all those records. And that was really cool. That's really the original aesthetic of a break, because it's something that happened on a real recording. Drummer gets a solo, a little breakdown. But now it's like the terminology breakbeat is just kind of being misused, and it's cool, I'm not. It's no diss, but it's good, like you said, for people to find the origin of what a breakbeat really is.
Right, exactly.
So,
why does it
also continue the legacy? Continue the legacy. It would be great if artists nowadays could bring that back to their songs and giving the drummer. You know what I'm saying? It was like a pop or a soulful record. It wasn't a jazz song, because when you're playing an instrumental, of course everybody's going to take a solo, but these were happening like big hits where they would give the drummer breakdown. So it would be good, if that could happen again in music. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you didn't cut me off, and I think so. All right. So I kind of front loaded this with like, here's all this stuff this guy's doing and has done. And some people may not actually know, who you are or what you do or what a little bit of your history is. So let's kind
Yes,
of,
sir.
let's kind of rewind a little bit and maybe
Okay.
give a little context for, how you got started, what you've done in your career, what you want to do in your
Mhm.
career.
Yes,
Because
sir.
we were talking, we got into some of those, the breaks, and it's like, okay, we can lead into glitch beats or whatever, whatever terminology people want to call what's happening with
Mhm.
that. But it's like, oh, okay, hold up. Let's give a little context for for this first before we
Mhm.
dive too deep into that.
Okay. Yeah. As you may not have, or you as you may or may not know, I started playing the drums at the age of 4. Both my parents were musicians. My mom's she still plays. My dad's deceased, and my dad was my mom's organ teacher, so that's how they met. So music was a part of my lifestyle growing up.
Really?
And I learned how to play at church. So when I would go to church, I was inspired when I would see my cousins and uncle play. I have a lot of family and relatives that play drums. So I grew up Pentecostal, and I grew up in a church where we had service every night except
So,
Saturdays.
so where did
So,
you? This is interesting to me because my dad was a pastor. So where
oh
did you grow up,
wow,
if you don't mind me asking?
yeah, I grew up in Michigan. I grew up in Michigan, and Pentecostal Church of God in Christ, and like that was a thing, and everything outside of gospel was considered secular music, and we were told it was a no you could listen to. So, I didn't really find out about other genres until early teenager. And also, when I went to school, when I would find out about hip hop, but it was a struggle. But I remember fast forwarding when I finally got exposed to like the jazz drummers per se, through the Buddy Rich Memorial Series. One of my older mentors gave me the Buddy Rich Volume 2. It was with Steve Gadd, Dave Weckl, and Vinny Colaiuta, one of my
Hmm.
heroes. And then I was gifted the one with Louis Bellson and Dennis Chambers. To make a long story short, when I started finding out about all those other drummers, I was like, this is a whole new world. And the gospel at the time that I grew up, it was just about playing pocket. It wasn't how the gospel is now, where it's like fusion gospel is a lot more chops, a lot more production. But back in
Yeah.
the days, it was more disco, like this repetitious loop, because so people can dance. Like when you go and you playing house music, it's that repetitious, you know what I'm saying? So
Hmm.
people can that house that loop that loopy groove. And that's how gospel was, and that's when I came up. That's what I played, and that was popular. And then fast forward, obviously when I started, I remember when I got exposed to Steve Gadd, and I was just like, man, this cat can not only play jazz, he can play other genres, and I was really inspired and impressed. I was like, I want to be a genre bending drummer. I don't want to just be a gospel drummer, but it was really hard because I had a lot of opposition coming up in the Pentecostal, in the religious background. Like when you're
That's
told that.
I gotta.
Go ahead.
I'm gonna say, I don't want to interrupt you, but I've got a. That's a similar story to me, And I grew
Mm,
up, in southern. My dad was a southern minister down in Mississippi,
mm,
but it was a charismatic
mm,
church, so we had
mm,
drums and the full deal. But
mm,
he traveled a lot to different churches, and for whatever reason, the black community really loved him. They loved his delivery style. So I was like,
mm.
growing up in inner city churches in Atlanta and Chicago, and I always loved
Wow.
going for the music part of it because I was
Yes, sir.
kind of like you. It's like in my house, it really
Mm,
wasn't accepted. And so the way I could get around that was they let me listen to radio some. So when I was in my room, I would always have a
mm.
blank tape and I'd be sitting there waiting for my favorite song to come on. As soon as it did, I wait for that. You got to wait for that right time when the radio DJ shuts up and the song comes on. You like bam, and you hit it, and then you got to get it right at the
Yeah.
perfect time before he gets back in, so you can get that good mixtape. And but that was
Yo.
a similar thing. And whenever I got my first full time gig on Bourbon Street when I was 19, I had to I booked a lunch with my dad, and I said, "Hey, are you cool with this? Like, this is way different than going to church. Are you going to be all right with me doing this?"
Wow.
So, it was kind of a similar experience where I discovered a lot of these players way later, and it's interesting you
Mm,
mentioned that about gospel music and gospel drumming, because a lot of players, they say they want to play, in the gospel style, but I find a lot of
mm,
them don't understand what that means. Historically, they understand what it sounds like now, and they can emulate some
mhm,
of those
mhm.
things. But whenever you talk to the cats that have been playing it for years, they're like, "Hey, why don't you come back here and look at like the evolution here because you're missing a piece. Like you're missing this piece and it doesn't sound authentic unless we can come back and add this piece to it. So that's interesting that you started way back then.
Yeah, that's a good, thank you. And that's a great story for, that you mentioned too. That's wow. That mixtape and recording at the right time, that brings back memories, because that's what I used to do too. Because, when I went to school, I would find out about hip hop, and then I would eventually, I was like, man, I want to be down. So I would come home and I would watch Yo MTV Raps or whatever the videos. They were showing music videos at the time, and I would have to wait until my favorite track come on, and I would record it to cassette. Like,
yeah.
I took my cassette player everywhere I went. Like, even when I was rehearsing, like that was my best friend. Like, I wanted to record so I could just make notes. And but yeah, mentioning the history of the gospel, that's a great point. I just remember coming up, it was all about being a team player. Everybody playing to catch the spirit.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Like playing worship music, and people still doing it now. It's just so much production. Sometimes I feel like it takes away from that the spirituals part. And I'm not saying this in no diss, but it's like when you go to church now, it's like a motion picture. It's like big theatrical production. You know what I'm saying? But back in the days, it was just raw. It was just musicians, everybody playing together, playing this, this locked grooves. And when you hear that, it's just like when you go and you hear like the house music. It's something that it does, that repetitious groove. It just does something to you. It puts you in a trance. So that's the same thing with back in the days, playing those repetitious, fast disco style church grooves. It puts you in a trance, and you just, just create, you just connect, with the creator. But basically, just being a team player and not being like, okay, when I'm playing in the service, it's all about what can I do to make the fanciest feel that I can do, to go over this gospel song.
Right.
So I think
and that brings up
mentality.
That brings up something important that I think we're hitting on several things. Like we're hitting on communities. So, and how they relate to music. So you have a hip hop community, you have the gospel community. And, whenever I was trying to learn, I lived in New Orleans for a few years and was raised not far from there. When I was trying to learn second line, man, I sounded as white as a sheet of paper. Like, it was bad. I sounded awful. And the guys would laugh and they'd kick me off the drum set and they'd say, no, it sounds like this. And they play it. And I told somebody, I said, I didn't understand how second line felt until I went to Cafe Du Monde at midnight and had beignets and coffee, until I saw a funeral, until I saw a wedding, until I actually went to a parade and saw, not like the parades that all the visitors come to see, all the tourists, but actually the local parades. Like until I went into the different neighborhoods and understood, Treem brass band and all these brass bands and the culture that goes with that, and the kind of the atmosphere around. I always tell people, I'm like, there's some great videos online you can go look up of just bootleg videos of these, neighborhoods with brass bands coming through. I'm like, that's second line, and it's the same thing with, I think, with the gospel community. And because I came up and was exposed to a lot of that coming up, and it's said in those services, and I knew what that about. The first time that somebody said, well, here's some gospel drumming, I'm like, no, I don't really recognize that. That's not really what, I came up hearing as that. And to me, it points back to, what we should all be concerned about as musicians, which is the community part of it. Because we as musicians are always trying to find people of like-minded communities so that we can make these little pockets. And I get really into, like, I was talking to my son the other day, because he was talking about the Aerosmith crossover. What rapper did they cross over with way back in the day? I forget who it was, but Run DMC. Thank you. Yeah. And I told him, I said, well, what you don't know is, I said, hip hop and punk rock used to run pretty close together because neither of them was a mainstream art form. I said, so it was not uncommon to see a bunch of rappers hanging out with a bunch of punk rockers on the street. I said, because they played the same clubs. Nobody would let them into the regular clubs. I said, and it's an example of these two communities coming together, and then you have something like the Beastie Boys come out of that, or several other, several other groups we can point to that came out of like that collaboration. But it was two communities, and I think sometimes we skip, that community aspect. I don't mean to steal your thunder here. I get real adamant with my students. I'm like, you don't know how to play a samba because you have never even looked up a video or looked up a recipe about anything about that. That's why it doesn't feel right,
Yes. You that's spot on. Like those are good. That's good input. And you're right. But yeah, just because it's really hard to say things nowadays because you have the people critics. They if you say the wrong thing, people take it a certain way. But basically, just to make a long story short and try to clean it up is,
I
I
was going
think
to say we left off. So you came up in the gospel community, and then you slowly started getting into more secular music, discovering more drummers.
yeah. But just to clean up the gospel part. So the thing that I got about growing up and playing in church, and I'm glad that I came up that way, learn how to play by ear, was that the concept was to give God your best. You know what I'm saying? So that would be your dress, the way that you live your life, the way that you perform. And performing at your best don't mean, playing, everything that you can play in that moment. It just means doing your best to be a team player. You know what I'm saying? Showing God's love through your instrument and being the team player. So that's what I want to say. Just even though gospel have changed now, I just think like people they have they phones and set up to be film themselves, and sometimes it just the drummer showcasing it's just all about me. Like what can I do? And it's like that's not it's supposed to be about worshiping. So I just think that's where that's where we need to understand what our role is. But if I'm not knocking those that want to use a church environment as a reel to try to get footage so they can get an endorsement or whatever. But it's a time for everything. It's a time for everything, and I just think that, like you said, it's good if people can learn the history and foundation so they can be educated on why I'm in this position. And that goes for not just gospel, that goes for all the other genres. When you're playing reggae, there's a certain aesthetic, certain grooves that work, and it's a certain energy. And if you want to cross over into different genres, like you said, it'd be great that they can just go get some history first, because it's not choppy, it's just playing the grooves that make people get into that vibe. If you're playing jazz, that's a whole different thing. If you're playing rock, it's a whole different vibe. So that's my advice. That's my advice.
Okay.
Like you said,
so take me from growing. You said Michigan, right?
Yes,
That's
yes,
where
sir.
you grew up.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So take me
Yes,
from
sir.
there to kind of like what you're doing now.
Okay, so just to fast forward, I'm currently in Nashville, Tennessee. I moved in from New York, and I've been in New York for a long time. And I remember my first um, journey in going to New York was right out of high school, and that was like being in New York in the '90s, and that was a different time.
Right.
I don't know if you ever been to New York, and especially during the '90s, there was no cameras around. It was just so raw. Like it was exciting. It was also scary. But I just remember seeing, being inspired by going to a city. I feel like, yo, because of how I grew up, people kind of sometimes can like say I'm a little out the box or like a little bit weird. But I feel like when I went to New York, I could be accepted because I was, just I won't say a head thinker. I just thought outside the box. But normally people they would have a certain mentality, and it was like, this is what you're going to do. If you're going to play gospel, that's your box that you in. If you're going to play, whatever the style is, that's your box. But when I went to New York, I was like, man, I can be myself and not feel judged. So I remember, just getting a taste of that. And I was producing at the time. I became a composer, had some opportunities at the time. Me and my sister had a group, Daru Arena, and that was a cool time. But fast forward to when I got back on the New York scene, 2007, and it's been amazing for my career. And I had started working in the hip hop community. Before New York, I actually lived in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania for some time. And I was playing with a percussion ensemble called Solomon Steel. And it was a steel drum band. You know what I'm saying? And Guy Phil Solomon, he made steel drums. And I remember he had a family band. So I moved to Pittsburgh to work at the shop and play in the family band. That was a really cool opportunity. And everybody wanted to be a genre bending drummer. That was another notch on my belt, learning how to play those, those Caribbean beats. Saying that was really cool.
That's a whole different. Yeah. When I was in
Yeah.
college, there was a huge steel pan community there. We had a steel pan
Mm.
orchestra. We had and I played out. Dr. John Wooten, he had his own group that I played out with. Yeah, that's a whole different type of music.
Yeah, it's killing. I'm glad that I got a chance to have that, learn that, and it is added to my repertoire, and being able to have another genre that I can play. But being in Pittsburgh was really cool. Pittsburgh have a lot of great drummers. I know some people are still there, and some people move, but Dave Throckmart, Johnson. It's a lot of killing players. Poogie Bell. I don't know if you know who Poogie Bell
Mm-hmm.
is, but man. Oh, Jeff Tain Watts. A lot of killer
Is he out
players
of
from
there,
Pittsburgh.
man?
So
I went through a
he's some, yeah,
huge. I went through a huge Tane phase.
yeah. And actually, I heard that Benny Caliuta was born, if not in Pittsburgh, outside of the area. But yeah, it's a lot of Pittsburgh got a great legacy from great musicians, and it was just cool being in that scene and them, appreciating what I brought to the community. And I used to play for the house band at this venue called the Shadow Lounge. It was like the place where when hip hop artists would come, they would come perform at this venue. I played in the every Tuesday and Wednesday they had a spoken word night. I played in the house band. But anyway, to make a long story short, I had made a reputation for myself, being able to learn people's music really fast at the last minute, and opportunity came. I was able to join the group Slum Village. I had no idea that one of the musicians that they brought in town to play at the Shadow Lounge so happened to be Slum Village's music director. And I learned his music at the last minute, played the show, made a good impression. And at the Dilla transition in 2006, early 2006 in February, Slum Village, they wanted to, make a new turn in their career, and they had some opportunities to perform where they needed a live band. And one of the opportunities was performing the Essence Festival that happens in New Orleans. And I got the recommendation, so I came on as Slum Village drummer, and that was a dream of mine because Dilla was one of my favorite producers, and I've been a fan of that music. And Jay Dilla, aka JD James Yancey, rest in peace. He was known, for the way that he would produce his drums, which is the whole drunken stutter and actually the human element that we all, because we're not machines, sometimes when we play we drag, and he just he made a thing out of it, and it became a huge influential aesthetic in our community to this day.
Now let's go back to what we were mentioning earlier about creating breaks from records, because some people don't know this. And correct me if I'm wrong. The reason that a lot of what Dilla did felt the way it felt is because you're looping an imperfect human on a snippet of an album that wasn't recorded to a click. And when you do that, like you said, it's a glitchy or a drunken feel, or it's the human element, but it's the human element kind of looped.
Yeah, that's a good point. A lot of producers did it. Now, what Dilla did outside of the looping was he would say for Funky Drummer, when you get an MPC, which is a device where you can sample, you can take each drum and sample the snare drum by itself. You can sample the hi-hat, the kick drum, and then when you go make a new beat from those Clyde Stubblefield drums, you can program that. So you can have the snare on one pad, the hi-hat. So basically when you link that up to a computer, whatever your sequence device is, that computer gives you options to either quantize, which means if you make a mistake, if you're sequencing a beat and you drag behind a beat, you put quantize, the computer will fix it for you. But if you have it quantize off, if you make that mistake, the mistake will stay in there. So that regular, as human beings, as like at a certain era, like in the Motown days, when those guys were recording the tape, I don't think it was Pro Tools around. So if they made a mistake, or if they hit the rim shot by mistake, you could hear those in the records. And I think from what I was told, Dilla, he wanted to have that real, that essence of being a human and make a mistake in the aesthetic of his drum production. So he like if he was sequencing the snare by itself, if he got behind, he left it. He left that he didn't let the computer fix it. He left it and that became a thing, and he coined that, and it really, really became huge and very influential, and it transferred over to the drumming community. One of the drummers that was champion that was Questlove from the Roots. Shout out to Questlove Amir. I remember seeing the Roots crew, and I was blown away seeing a live band playing like a machine. Playing those loops live. I was like, oh man, it would be a dream to do that. Which eventually my dreams will come true. But yeah, so Dilla was Questlove was one of the people that could emulate and play that drunken kind of stuttered Dilla break stuff. But I'm a
one of the
composer.
first places. One of the first places I found Questlove was the old MTV Unplugged series. Whenever the Roots played behind Jay-Z, that was one of the first times I'd heard Quest, and I was scrolling and I was like, man, how good is this gonna be? Unplugged hip hop, like this is, And then 2 hours later, I was still sitting there, and I'm like, how's he replicating that? So that he's a master at that, man.
Yeah, one day, whenever we get in the same room again, or we get in the interview session, I definitely got some questions for him. But from what I was told or what I've heard, I think he just used to practice, just learning how to play like a machine. Mm-hmm. And you are what you eat. Like if you obviously listen to a certain style or certain music, it's going to come out in your playing. I listen to a lot of hip hop, so it comes out in my playing. I listen to a lot of Dilla, that vibe, so it comes out in my playing. So by me being a producer, it was easy for me to play those beats because it's what I eat, sleep, and listen to that stuff all the time. So, it's hard for when people ask me, how do you play it? I don't even know how to break it down, to people, but I just feel it. It's just something that's a part of me because it's something that I listen to. But yeah.
Listening, you keep saying that word a lot, and that's something that I harp on a lot. I think people should be listening 10 and 20 times as much as they're listening to music. If you get around cats that are really great at their craft, it's not just that they practice that craft. It's that the time outside of practicing that craft is consumed with especially with music, or with artists. Visually, they're looking at other art, whereas musicians, we're hearing that other, so unless you go see it live. And I think that everybody should have hours in their day where you just listen and you set aside certain albums here. I'm going to listen. There's something that comes, it's powerful if you sit on an album for weeks. And it's just like you go back to it every day, it's playing in your dreams. And I don't feel like musicians listen enough. I don't want to say these days. That makes us sound like old men sitting here talking. We're not. But I feel like listening is an art that should be taught more.
Yes, that's a great aspect. Yep. And because it's like having a conversation. Like we're both not talking at the same time. You say something and then I say something. And when we're playing on the bandstand, you're having a conversation with the musicians on stage, also the audience. So it just being a good listener is can either make or break your career. Because if you're the type of person if you're outspoken, you're going to go into all your environments trying to be outspoken and play outspoken. And that might not work for that environment. Like, it's all about listening and being a team player. So that's a great point. And the music, from what I was told, it tells you what to play. That's my concept. When I get on to work with anybody, that's why going to these jam sessions sometimes can really be a great training. If you're going and you're getting thrown in the fire with new musicians that you don't play with on a regular basis, it forces you to be like, okay, I gotta figure out how I can vibe with this person in 4 minutes, and I got try to make the best of it. You know what I'm saying? So those jam sessions are good training to play with musicians that are better than you as well. Because they're gonna make you go to another level. If you're playing with people and they're not on the level, you're gonna have to. It's just gonna bring you down. You want to either play with people that's on the same level or better, so it can push you. To go higher. Because you don't want to be the weakest link on a bandstand.
No, you don't want to. All right, so Dilla's music producer came out and you played behind him. He dug it. So you went out with them and started playing, correct?
Yeah, so so Dilla actually transitioned. He passed away, but T3, who was the last original living member, the other member, co-member by 10 passed away too. So it was a trio. T3 is still alive, so he moved on, and they added a new member, Elzai. He was like the next wave of Slum Village at the time. So yeah, they had some opportunities to perform live, and I got recommendations to come on as the band. So yeah, we would perform songs from those albums that Dilla produced, and also the other albums that were not all produced by Dilla. It was a really cool experience, and just working with them, that raised my resume, because they were a legendary group, and they had a certain thing that they brought to the hip hop community. It was huge. So eventually, I started working. I remember after living in Pittsburgh and moving, back being back into the New York scene, I got the opportunity to work with Talib Kweli. He was a huge rapper. He had a group called, he's in a group called Black Star, which they're back doing albums. Shout out to Mos Def. Yancey Day. I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name right, but yeah, Mos Def, they got a group called Black Star, and Talib Kweli, he's one of the best rappers in what he does. Lyricist, you know what I'm saying? I got the chance to music direct and be in his band. And just playing with those two groups was, brought a lot of buzz and a lot of great attention. I made a name for myself of being the drummer that can come in and as a music director and learn the music just like the recordings, because I think that's when you get these opportunities, when people go to the concerts, they want to hear what they heard on the album. You know what I'm saying? If you play anything different, then it depends on the genre, but definitely like in hip hop and certain genres, when people go to the concert, they want to hear what they bought, what they playing in the concert. So I made a reputation of being a drummer that can hire musicians. We learn the music just like the records. And I just started working with all the like the 90s and so on, like rappers. And it became a part of my journey. And then I graduated from hip hop to rock and roll.
That's when I started that was my question. Black. I've been holding off my question. I'm like, so you're in, you're in Michigan, you're in New York, you're in Pittsburgh, and then Nashville. Yes, one of those doesn't fit quite, So tell me about Nashville. How'd you wind up here?
So I moved to Nashville. Definitely working with Jack White was inspiring for me to move to Nashville. I remember I got the opportunity to work with him through a hip hop artist named Black Milk from Detroit, Michigan. Jack White has a label called Third Man Records. He invited Black Milk to come do 2 songs at his home studio, and then the following day we had a performance at Third Man Records. Make a long story short, after the Third Man Records performance, Jack got excited, and a couple months later, when I went back to New York, I got an email from his team that Jack was collaborating with RZA from the Wu-Tang Clan. I'm not sure if you know who the Wu-Tang Clan is. Yep. But Wu-Tang Clan, just do your rules and history. And I was excited because by me being a big fan of RZA, I was like, oh, this is amazing. Came all the way to Nashville, got in the studio to record with him and Jack White, and RZA canceled the session. So it was, my heart was broken. Jack felt bad. And he was like, man, I don't want to send you back to New York. I have a couple solo songs. And to make a long story short, that is what started Jack's solo career. That cancellation turned out to be a blessing. Yes, so I recorded with Jack in 2011 earlier, and at the end of the year, I was just like, man, what happened to those songs? And I remember at the beginning of 2012, I got an email from Jack's team, and they were inquiring about my availability for almost 8 months to a year in advance. I'm like, man, what's going on? And then Jack emailed me personally. He was like, those songs you recorded on are going to be for my solo album, Blunderbuss. I have a vision of touring with everybody that was involved in the project, all female band and all male band, and asked if I can be in a male band. And that's how that started. And I remember when I was playing in the band, our keyboard player, Ike Owens, rest in peace, he passed away while we were on tour. But Ike Owens, he's from Long Beach. And I remember while we were on tour, we was like, man, we would come to Nashville to rehearse. And we was like, man, Nashville kind of got a vibe. He was like, man, we should come to Nashville and bring a vibe and see if Jack would be interested in doing a soul division through his label. Mm-hmm. So we had plans to come to Nashville to try to come onto the scene and bring this whole soulful vibe. And Ike ended up passing away. He passed away before I could move. And so that was, definitely tragedy. But I remember when I come to Nashville, walk down Broadway, I would see the country guys, and I was like, this is a whole world that I've never been in. I want to venture off into this world. So I thought Nashville would be a good place to get into the country and do more rock and roll sessions. So that was the inspiration for me moving to Nashville.
Very cool. I didn't realize you had been with Jack that long. Seems like there was another artist that went out with him. She was in the female band. Was it Brooke Wagner? Was she the keyboardist for his female band? I don't want to misspeak.
Yes, it was. But... Yeah, Brooke Wagner was the keyboardist for
when she first moved.
The name of the band.
Yeah, when she first moved to town, I went out and saw a songwriters round up at the Rutledge, which is closed now, and there were these two songwriters, and Brooke was sandwiched in between them, and they played, and I'm like, oh, that was okay. And then she came on, and she played her song. I turned to my wife, I'm like, oh, who is this? I said, holy cow. And she's got a little suitcase there, and she's selling these CDs that were like, she put them together with yarn for the little cases and stuff. And I still have that bootleg, that bootleg 5, that EP that she had. But anyway, when I found out she was out with Jack, I was like, oh, that's cool. And then later, my band actually bought her van that she used to have. Anyway, I always loved her. But I remember that time whenever he took both those bands out. I always thought it was a really cool idea. So all that leads up to now, and you're still playing with Jack, right?
Yes. We just finished up the tour. We were out for almost a year, pretty much a year. The last show that we just performed at SNL, Saturday Night Live. We just wrapped up maybe in the end of February. So yeah, it's been almost 13 years now.
That's crazy.
I started with him in 2012, and we 11 years later.
Yeah, that's crazy. My 15-year-old, he'll always come up and we share music. That's one of my favorite things to do is give him the Spotify while we're in the car, and he just kind of scrolls through. Some stuff he's discovering is real old, some of it's new. He's going through this Elvis Presley fit right now, but he got in one day. He said, hey, I gotta play you somebody. He said, you ever heard of somebody called Jack White? And I'm like, yeah, I've heard of Jack. Yeah, I've heard of Jack White. What are you talking about? If I heard of Jack White, he's got this new song out. So recently, he was playing me that stuff. Okay, so you were telling me about some solo stuff that you do as well that you've produced. What do you got? What do you got with that?
Like I mentioned earlier, I think so. I have a label called Music Records, and that's been around for a minute, but I have a new release that came out last year with producer Kev Brown. Mm-hmm. He's from the DMV area. He's an amazing producer. The name of this project is called A Daru State of Mind. And the album title was inspired by Nas is a New York rapper. He's a huge rapper that's still killing it. Nas' first album was called A New York State of Mind. It was one of his best works that he's done. Producers, DJ Premier, one of my favorite producers, Pete Rock, who I actually got a chance. I'm actually in Pete Rock's band, the Soul Brothers. So anyway, the album title was inspired by that, but he called it A Daru State of Mind because I did a couple sample packs through Native Instruments. One came out through a company called Looploft. Shout out to Ryan Bruce. And at the Looploft, I don't know if they're still around or fell apart. Ryan started Your Rock, which is the new company that he's putting out his sample packs through. And I gave Kev Brown, I sent him the files because you can absolutely purchase it, but I sent the drums to Kev Brown and he went and composed like 20 tracks for my drum loops. I was like, man, we should make a project out of this. And what I did was I went back in the studio and played on top of his programs, my drum programming, and with his keyboards and samples, whatever he used. And this is the project. And the project features Eddie Sancho, who's also a legendary engineer. He used to engineer for DJ Premier a lot of that 90s stuff, like Jay-Z, the different records that came out at the time from Jay-Z, MOP, and Eddie Sancho. He mixed the record, so he got that real aesthetic. It's I'm very proud of this project. It came out through Fat Beats as well, and shout out to Yapendo who did the artwork. It's an instrumental project, and it's out right now. So this is one of the releases that came out. Then I have another project that I released that's on cassette. I know it's kind of hard to see this, but it's a collaboration with myself, and T3, the last original member from Slum Village, who I spoke about early. And the other person that's on this project is Amp Fiddler, who was a Detroit legend. Like Amp Fiddler taught Dilla how to use MPC, and he's an amazing vocalist and composer. And he's playing the keys on this project, and we actually recorded it. The name of this project is called Conant Raw Sessions. Conant Gardens is an area in Detroit, Michigan, where they all grew up. So that's where Amp Fiddler's studio was at. So we recorded it in that area. So it was the spirit of Dilla. And we were actually listening to Amp Fiddler have one of Dilla's old MPCs with the stems, and we were just going through some of his beats, and we just got inspired, and we made an entire project, based off what we heard. This project is out now. It's only on cassette. Came up to Space Flight Records. I'm a nonprofit label in Austin. Shout out to Brett. And it's available. Got to get it while supplies last, because we didn't press up that many, because we know everybody don't have cassette players anymore.
No doubt.
But
all right, so
go ahead. I'm sorry.
No. I was going to say. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh no, I was just I noticed the time. I know you got a hard cutoff time, so I didn't want to overstep the bounds with this. Yes. So I was going to ask about. So you've got a couple new projects that have come out. You've got the book that have come out that people can pick up. You're on Modern Drummer here, March 2023 is what it is. And so what's the plans for this next year, man? What do you got planned for 23, 24?
That's a good question. I'm taking it as it comes, but like I mentioned in a Modern Drummer magazine, I want to take our time to focus on my artistry. And for years, as you know, as drummers, when we performing with bands, we're giving our service and our magic to those people. So now I'm like, if people, they feel like I have all this vibe or this certain magic, I was like, why not put it into my own career? So I'm planning, to work on. I'm working on the solo release, which like an official Daru project. I can speak about that because I mentioned it in the Modern Drummer magazine, and I'm just planning on really putting myself out there as an artist. Not just a drummer. I'm a producer and influence. And I own the label and I'm an influencer as well. But really putting myself out there as an artist and producing more and doing more collaborations. I have some really cool projects that's in the works that's coming out, but can't mention it at the moment. But yeah, that's what I'm planning on doing. And wherever the creator leads me, I want to continue to be a vessel, and show God's love through whatever I do on stage and off stage. So yeah, we'll see.
I love it, man. I love it. Well, dude, thank you for taking the time to talk to me, to, tell us what's been going on, give us a little bit of history about yourself. And yeah, if anybody, you can obviously find Daru online. You can find all of his projects online. You said Barnes & Noble is bringing your book out?
Yes. Okay. Barnes & Noble. All the links are in my bio. You can follow me at Daru Jones, Daru Jones on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and my website is Rusick Records. That's RUSICRECORDS.com. And yeah, I want to shout out all of the drummers, the new drummers, as well as us that's continuing on the legacy. We got to keep the art. We got to keep the live vibes, keep it alive. And also shout out to the mom and pop shops, that we can go to, like the Forks, having the new products available that you see at NAMM. Let's continue to support those stores so they can stay open. And for those that are in our position, Taylor, this podcast is great because we want to. It's important that we bring up the next generation instead of complaining, talking about what they are not doing. We have a outlet, and it's important that we teach and show them the way.
100% agree with that, man. Thank you so much for your time, everybody. Go practice, check out some of Daru's stuff, pick up his new book, and I will see everybody here in the next episode of the podcast.